My beloved child, there are stories that disappear with time, and there are stories that wait patiently for the right hands to uncover them. This is one of those stories. It began on an ordinary afternoon when an old leather wallet, faded by decades of silent journeys, slipped from the back of a forgotten wooden drawer. Its edges were cracked, its color nearly erased, and it looked worthless to everyone who had seen it before. But the strange part was not the wallet itself. It was the way everyone in the family had quietly avoided touching it for years, as if it carried a memory too heavy to speak aloud. No one could explain why it had never been thrown away. No one could remember who had placed it there. Yet the moment your fingers brushed against its worn surface, something felt different. The room seemed strangely still, and for the first time, you noticed a tiny stitch hidden deep inside the wallet's inner lining. It was so carefully sewn that no ordinary person would ever think to look twice. At that exact moment, without realizing it, you had already stepped into a mystery that had been waiting for more than 20 years. The wallet looked almost empty. A few faded receipts. A train ticket with no readable destination. An old photograph with half the faces cut away. Nothing about it explained why someone had hidden it instead of discarding it. But curiosity has a way of opening doors that fear keeps closed. As you carefully examined every corner, you noticed that one section felt thicker than the others. It wasn't obvious. It wasn't visible. It was hidden beneath another layer of leather that had aged perfectly with the rest of the wallet. Whoever created this secret compartment wanted it to survive generations without being discovered. Your heartbeat grew faster as you gently loosened the tiny stitches one by one. Inside was not money, not jewelry, not anything anyone would expect. Instead, there was a folded piece of yellowed paper, no larger than a business card, sealed with a symbol that no one in your family had ever mentioned. Before unfolding it, one impossible thought crossed your mind: if this had remained hidden for decades, what kind of truth was powerful enough to stay buried for so long? As the paper slowly opened, your eyes landed on a single sentence written in careful handwriting. It wasn't a goodbye. It wasn't a confession. It was an instruction. If you are reading this, it means you found what everyone else was meant to miss. Those words sent a chill through your entire body. Beneath them was an old address that no longer appeared on modern maps, along with a date that matched the very day your grandfather had mysteriously disappeared from public life. Suddenly, memories that never seemed important began connecting like pieces of a forgotten puzzle. The family arguments that stopped whenever his name was mentioned, the locked attic nobody entered, the strange promise your grandmother made before she passed away, telling everyone that some doors should remain closed until the right person arrives. What if she wasn't speaking in riddles? What if she knew this wallet would eventually reach exactly the person holding it now? Every answer seemed to create two new questions, and each question pulled you deeper into a story that refused to stay hidden. But the greatest surprise had not revealed itself yet. As you turned the paper over, faint marks began appearing where the light touched the page. Invisible ink, patiently waiting all these years for sunlight to expose what ordinary eyes could never see. Slowly, another message emerged, line by line, until a single sentence became perfectly clear. The real secret is not inside this wallet anymore, it is waiting where this journey first began. Your heart froze. This was never about the wallet. The wallet was only the key. Somewhere beyond that forgotten address, beyond the silence your family had carried for decades, something extraordinary was still waiting to be found. And as you carefully placed the hidden note back into your pocket, one impossible realization became undeniable. Someone had always expected you to continue the search. The question was no longer whether the secret was real. The only question left was, who had been watching, waiting for this exact moment all along? What happened next changed everything. The old address written on the hidden note led to a forgotten street that barely appeared on any modern map. Most of the buildings had been replaced long ago, but one small stone house still stood at the very end of the road, untouched by time. Its windows were covered in dust, its gate leaned to one side, and vines had quietly claimed the walls. Every neighbor gave the same strange answer when asked about it. Nobody has lived there for years. Yet every morning, someone swept the front steps. No footprints ever remained, no lights were ever seen, and no one could explain who was keeping the place from falling apart. The mystery only grew deeper. The closer you walked toward the house, the stronger the feeling became that this journey had been planned long before you were even born. The wallet had not simply revealed a location. It had guided you to a place where the past was still waiting to finish its story. The rusty front door was unlocked. Inside, the house looked frozen in another lifetime. Furniture sat exactly where it had always been. An old clock had stopped at the same minute decades ago. A fireplace held cold ashes that somehow looked untouched by time. Then something unusual caught your attention. Resting on a small wooden table was a single glass bottle filled with fresh water. It was perfectly clear, without a speck of dust, as though someone had placed it there only hours earlier. Beside it lay a folded envelope with no name written on it. Your hands hesitated before opening it. The first sentence immediately stole your breath. If you reached this house with the old wallet, you are exactly where you were always supposed to be. The handwriting matched the hidden note perfectly. Whoever had written it knew someone would eventually arrive. But how could anyone predict this after so many years? Every answer only uncovered another layer of the mystery. The letter did not explain everything. Instead, it revealed something even more surprising. It spoke about a wooden box hidden somewhere inside the house, a box that could only be found by someone carrying the wallet. No directions were given. No map. Only one final clue. Look where memories refuse to fade. You searched every room, every shelf, every drawer, finding nothing except old family photographs whose faces seemed strangely familiar. Then your eyes stopped on a faded picture hanging above the fireplace. It showed the very same wallet resting beside a young man whose smile looked almost identical to yours. As you carefully lifted the frame from the wall, something small slipped onto the floor. It was an old brass key wrapped inside a tiny piece of cloth embroidered with the same mysterious symbol hidden inside the wallet. At that moment, you realized the wallet had never contained the greatest secret. It had only been leading you from one clue to the next. Holding the key tightly, you noticed something you had completely missed before. Behind the fireplace stones was the outline of a narrow wooden door, almost impossible to see unless the afternoon sunlight entered from the exact right angle. The key fit perfectly. A quiet click echoed through the silent house, and the hidden door slowly opened. Cool air drifted out from the darkness below, carrying the scent of aged paper and cedar wood. Far beneath the house, a faint golden glow reflected against the walls, as though something valuable had been patiently waiting in complete silence for decades. You took one careful step forward, unaware that what rested beneath that house would reveal a truth so unexpected that it would forever change the meaning of the old wallet, and the reason it had been hidden all those years. Deep beneath the silent house, the truth finally began to breathe. Each wooden step creaked beneath your feet, but the sound never echoed back. It was as though the underground chamber absorbed every whisper, protecting its secrets from the outside world. At the bottom of the staircase stood a small room lined with shelves filled with journals, rolled maps, faded letters, and carefully labeled boxes. Nothing had been scattered. Nothing had been abandoned. Everything had been preserved with incredible care, waiting for one person to arrive. In the center of the room rested a beautifully carved wooden chest. The brass symbol on its lid matched the one hidden inside the old wallet. Your hands trembled as you unlocked it. Inside was no treasure of gold or jewels. Instead, there were hundreds of handwritten pages tied together with a simple ribbon. Resting on top was another envelope with only 4 words written across it, for the final keeper. Somehow, before even opening it, you knew those words were meant for you. The first pages revealed something no one in your family had ever imagined. Decades earlier, your grandfather had uncovered evidence that would have changed many lives, but instead of making it public, he chose to protect it until the right moment. He believed that truth without wisdom could destroy innocent people. So he documented everything, every meeting, every promise, every sacrifice, and hid the complete story where only someone guided by curiosity instead of greed would ever find it. The wallet had been his test. Most people would have searched it for money. Others would have thrown it away. But only someone willing to notice the smallest detail would discover the hidden compartment. That tiny decision had separated ordinary eyes from the person he had trusted without ever meeting. Suddenly, the mystery was no longer about a forgotten object. It was about a legacy built entirely on patience. As you continued reading, a folded family photograph slipped from between the pages. This time, every face was complete. There was your grandfather standing proudly beside several people you had never seen before. On the back was a sentence written in the same familiar handwriting: "Families are not remembered by what they own. They are remembered by what they protect." In that instant, countless childhood memories returned. The strange stories your grandmother never finished. The locked cabinet no one was allowed to open. The annual family gathering where one chair was always left empty without explanation. None of those moments had been random. They were quiet reminders of a promise that had survived through generations. The hidden room, the old wallet, the secret notes, they were never separate pieces. They were all part of one carefully designed path leading to this exact moment. Then, just as you believed every answer had finally been uncovered, you noticed something hidden beneath the false bottom of the wooden chest. There was one final object wrapped in dark blue cloth. It wasn't a document. It wasn't another letter. It was a small silver key attached to a faded leather tag bearing a single sentence: "This opens the place where the story truly ends." Your heart raced as you unfolded an old map tucked beneath it. A single location had been marked with a red circle far beyond the forgotten house. No explanation. No directions. Only one final handwritten message at the bottom of the page: if you have reached this point, then you already know, the greatest secret was never hidden inside the old wallet. It was hidden inside the person who refused to stop searching. With the silver key in your hand and the mysterious destination now waiting, you realized the journey was far from over. Because the final truth had been hidden in a place no one had dared to visit for decades. Beyond the final gate, everything suddenly made sense. The silver key unlocked an iron door hidden beneath an old stone arch covered in vines. As the door slowly opened, sunlight poured into a quiet chamber unlike anything you had imagined. It was not a vault. It was not a place built to hide riches. It was a room built to preserve truth. Along the walls stood shelves filled with carefully protected journals, family records, sketches, letters, and photographs spanning generations. Every page carried one message above all others: that memories disappear when people stop protecting them. At the center of the room rested a polished wooden table with one final envelope waiting beneath a sheet of clear glass. It looked as though someone had placed it there only yesterday. Written across the front were the words that had followed you from the very beginning: for the one who never gave up. The old wallet had not brought you to treasure. It had brought you to the heart of your family's untold story. As you unfolded the last letter, the voice of its author seemed almost alive through the careful handwriting. It explained that every clue had been intentionally incomplete because the greatest discoveries are earned, not handed over. The wallet, the hidden compartment, the forgotten house, the underground chamber, and the silver key were never separate mysteries. They were chapters of one journey designed to reveal a single lesson. If you reached this page, the letter read, then you value truth more than convenience. That is why this story belongs with you now. Beside the letter rested a leather-bound journal containing the complete history of your family. Acts of kindness that were never celebrated, sacrifices that were never acknowledged, and promises that quietly shaped the lives of generations. You realized that the greatest inheritance was not wealth. It was understanding who came before you and why they protected these memories for so long. Turning the final pages, you found something that made your heart stop. Tucked inside the journal was the original photograph from the old wallet, but this time, nothing had been cut away. Every face was visible. Every name was written clearly on the back. Standing among them was a young child holding the very same wallet, smiling directly toward the camera. Below the picture was one final sentence: every generation chooses its next guardian long before they know it. Suddenly, you understood why the clues had felt strangely familiar. They had quietly shaped your life without you ever noticing. The stories your grandparents told, the habits they encouraged, the questions they always wanted you to ask, they had all prepared you for this moment. The wallet had never chosen you by accident. It had simply returned to the person who was ready to understand its purpose. As you carefully placed every letter back into its proper place, one final discovery caught your attention. Hidden beneath the glass tabletop was a small brass plaque engraved with a message that would stay with you forever. Secrets grow heavier with time, but truth becomes lighter when someone is willing to carry it. You looked once more at the old wallet resting quietly beside the journal. After decades of silence, its journey was finally complete. What had once appeared to be an ordinary, worn-out object had become the key that reunited an entire family's forgotten history. And as you stepped back into the daylight carrying nothing but the journal and the old wallet, you realized the greatest secret had never been hidden inside the leather itself, it had always been waiting inside the courage of the person willing to open it. Every mystery leaves behind one final truth. As you walked away from the hidden chamber, the old wallet felt strangely lighter in your hand, even though nothing had been removed from it. The weight that had disappeared was not leather or paper, it was the burden of an unanswered story. For decades, people had believed the wallet was nothing more than an old keepsake that refused to be thrown away. They never imagined it had quietly protected an entire family's forgotten history. Looking back one last time, you realized that every clue had appeared at exactly the right moment. If the wallet had been opened years earlier, its meaning would have been lost. If the hidden note had been found by someone chasing wealth instead of answers, the journey would have ended before it truly began. Some stories reveal themselves only when the right heart is ready to understand them. Days later, you gathered your family together and carefully placed the old wallet in the center of the table. One by one, you shared the letters, the photographs, the journals, and the remarkable path they had led you through. Silence filled the room as forgotten memories returned to those who had almost allowed them to disappear forever. Some recognized faces they had not seen since childhood. Others finally understood conversations that had never made sense before. There were smiles, quiet tears, and long moments when no one could find the right words. Yet the greatest surprise came from the youngest member of the family. Looking at the worn leather wallet, they softly asked, if this secret waited all these years. What should we protect for the future? In that simple question, you realized the journey had already begun again. The greatest legacy was no longer hidden inside the wallet. It had quietly moved into the hearts of everyone listening. Before leaving that evening, you returned the wallet to its original place, not because it needed to stay hidden, but because it had become a reminder instead of a mystery. This time, however, you placed a fresh note inside its secret compartment. It carried only one sentence: every generation deserves to know where it truly comes from. No puzzles. No invisible ink. No complicated clues. The long search had transformed secrecy into understanding. The old wallet no longer guarded unanswered questions. It protected a promise that the truth would never again be forgotten. Sometimes the greatest treasures are not discovered by opening something valuable. Sometimes they are discovered by opening something everyone else believed had no value at all. As the years passed, visitors occasionally noticed the old wallet resting quietly in its familiar place. They often smiled politely before looking away, seeing nothing more than cracked leather worn down by time. But you knew differently. Every mark on its surface carried the memory of courage, patience, and hope. Whenever someone asked why such an ordinary object was kept so carefully, you simply smiled, because the answer could never fit into a single sentence. The wallet had hidden a secret, but the journey had revealed something far greater, that truth, family, and love become timeless when someone chooses to preserve them instead of forgetting them. And somewhere beyond the final page of this story, another curious hand would someday notice a tiny detail that everyone else overlooked. Proving once again that extraordinary journeys often begin with the most ordinary things. Years have a quiet way of revealing what time once concealed. Long after the mystery of the old wallet had been solved, life returned to its familiar rhythm. The hidden room was carefully preserved, the journals were protected, and the letters were safely stored for future generations. Yet every now and then, your thoughts return to the first moment you picked up that worn piece of leather. It had looked so ordinary, so forgettable. And yet it had changed everything. You realized that the greatest discoveries rarely announce themselves with noise. They arrive quietly, disguised as things the world has already overlooked. That understanding began to change the way you saw every forgotten photograph, every handwritten note, and every family story that had almost faded away. The wallet had finished its journey, but it had awakened something far more valuable, a determination that no meaningful memory would ever disappear again. Seasons passed, and children in the family grew curious about the story they had heard so many times. They would ask to see the old wallet, expecting something extraordinary, only to find cracked leather, faded stitching, and a hidden compartment that now held nothing except the small promise you had written years earlier. At first they seemed surprised. Then they slowly understood the lesson that every generation before them had learned. The true secret had never been the paper hidden inside. It had been the courage to keep searching when everyone else believed there was nothing left to find. Each time the story was retold, it became a little less about mystery and a little more about hope, reminding everyone that the smallest objects can carry the biggest meanings when they are protected with love. One quiet evening, as the sun disappeared beyond the horizon, you opened the wallet one final time. Running your fingers across its worn edges, you noticed something you had never appreciated before. Every scratch, every crease, every faded corner marked a chapter of its remarkable journey. None of those imperfections reduced its value. They proved it had fulfilled its purpose. In that moment, you smiled, realizing the wallet had become a mirror of life itself. People often spend years searching for extraordinary moments, never realizing that the greatest turning points begin with simple choices, choosing to look closer, choosing to ask one more question, choosing not to give up when the answers seem impossible to reach. As you gently closed the wallet and placed it back where it belonged, the room felt peaceful in a way it never had before. There were no unanswered questions left, no hidden compartments waiting to be opened, no forgotten clues buried beneath old wood or faded paper. Only gratitude remained 8D. The story that had begun with a forgotten wallet had become a legacy that would outlive everyone who had taken part in it. And somewhere in the future, when another curious hand paused before walking past that old leather wallet, they would not simply see an object from another time. They would see a reminder that truth has a remarkable way of finding those who are willing to look beyond the surface, and that some of life's greatest treasures are not hidden to stay lost, but hidden until the right person